There's not just one way to teach and do an aerial invert. The way I'm going to teach you today is so that you are the strongest and the most controlled versus kind of throwing yourself up there and hoping for the best. If you are just throwing yourself up there and hoping for the best, it's not the end of the world, but you do need to understand that you probably are putting yourself at a slightly increased risk of injury. And if you don't learn to eventually get that control, it will hold you back from other skills. So it is not to shame anybody, but it's just to be honest and open about where we're at and where we could be. The prerequisites are quite arbitrary. They're just what I think is going to give you the best fighting chance of getting your aerial invert. So you still may be able to do this if you're not quite there. So three main things that I look for when people are starting to aerial invert. The first is that they can comfortably do 10 knee raises on each side, ideally really tucked up, so they're not just bringing their knees to here. They're getting quite a nice tuck or starting to work towards a nice tuck, and it's controlled. I'm not expecting someone to be able to keep their feet off the floor between each knee raise either. I'm just looking for each one to be good. So for example, I'm looking for hands at head height. This is super important. If you've been doing your knee raises like this, okay, you're gonna actually probably really struggle with your inverts and your aerial inverts. So we want the hands at about head height or slightly lower. We wanna make sure the shoulders are not up by the ears, and we wanna think about having complete control. So no jumping, no swinging, okay, we're simply lifting off the floor. So I'm up on tippy toes, I pull the pole out of the ceiling, and I'm controlling my knees up towards my shoulders. If you've been bringing your knees to your elbows, think about starting to take them out to your shoulders, because this allows you to really pull everything in and is going to help you on your way to invert, shoulder mounts, aerial inverts. Okay, so I would expect you to be able to do 10 up and down, nice and controlled. That doesn't mean you have to do 10 like rapid fire. You could take a few moments between each one, but within a training session that is achievable for you, and they've all got fairly good form. It might get a little bit dodgy towards the end, but you generally are quite comfortable. The next thing I'm looking for is someone who can hold their short arm position. I've said 5 seconds. To be fair, it could be a little bit less than that, but 5 seconds gives you the amount of time you're going to need to properly set everything up without rushing. So for that, I would say you need to be able to go to a climb. Hands should be at about head height or lower. You should be able to swing around to the side of the pole, and you're not losing your arms. So your hands are staying sort of just below nose height, I would say, so the bottom half of your face, and they're able to stay there for 5 seconds. So climb, hands at about head height, swing off to the side, shoulders are down by the ears, and you can hold this for about 5 seconds. Anywhere from 3 to 5 is probably good, to be fair. And the last one is that you can invert from the floor without having to swing and jump. So we're talking hips in front of the pole, up on tippy toes, hands at about head height, and we're just thinking tuck and reach. You don't necessarily need to be able to fully hold a straddle at the top, as long as you can get a foot or a knee on, and you can hold those other positions, then you should be good to go. Now, if you don't have that, keep working on those things. Make sure you're doing adequate strength training. We don't want to overdo it, but 10 to 15 minutes each time you train of strength training, as long as you're not training every single day, because that's overkill, is going to help you on your way. There's lots of videos on here that you can use for that. Now, let's talk the actual technique, because even if you've got those prerequisites, if you don't understand what the body's doing, you're going to struggle. So, first thing, we're going to climb. We're going to make sure that whichever hand's on top, our body's going to that side. And my hands are quite low. I'm going to swing around, and I need to make sure the pole is fully in my armpit and my hips are in front of the pole slightly. If you're not fully in the armpit and hips fully in front, you're going to struggle. If you're not in the ideal position, it makes it 1,000 times harder. Next thing, I'll just do this from here, is engaging the core. So if I'm in my armpit, let me lift up, in my armpit with my hips in front, but my legs are drooping towards the floor, actually kind of pulls me down. So what I'm looking for is this pelvic tilt. So I've spoken about this a lot at all levels, at all points in your training, and there's some videos in the technique section about this as well. So we're thinking granny bum, as we call it. So we're pulling the rib cage and the belly button backwards as we're tucking the bum under. This is going to activate your core, okay, and some of your deep core muscles hopefully as well. And as that happens, your feet will pull forward slightly. This is actually easier to hold. If I'm dead weight hanging on my arms, so much harder than if my other muscles support me. So let me show you a demonstration of that. So this is relaxed, this is engaged. Relaxed, engaged. Relaxed, engaged. Now, that's challenging, and you can practice that from the floor. You can practice that here by trying to lift your feet and your legs up without bringing your knees up. That's a good one to actually practice that movement. And it is challenging. And I wouldn't expect in the air for you to just be hanging there, bringing the legs in and out. You just need to have one good tuck. If you've got one good tuck of the pelvis, you're more likely to get up. So let's look at that again. I will do right and left very briefly at the end. Okay, so you know exactly what hand's doing what. So we climb. Whichever hand's on top, our body goes to that side, and we get it right in the armpit, hips in front. Pull the pole down through the shoulders. Tuck the pelvis under, so no relaxing. Tuck the knees up towards the shoulders and hipping back. Now that was very slow and controlled. I do not expect anyone when they're first learning this, or even some of my advanced students, to be able to do it that slow and controlled to begin with. This is all happening together. So get round, knees up, tip back. Now we do need the arms to start to straighten, but we are still engaging them. A lot of people just like hang off the arms, they kind of drop. So what ends up happening is they're coming up and then they kind of drop and they tip. They don't tip, sorry, they just end up falling down. And sometimes people are able to save that by using their foot and pulling their hips up. So they'll be here and they'll drop, and they'll get their foot on, and then they'll hoik their hips up. I mean, if it works, it works. But we're working towards not needing to do that. So most people don't pull for long enough. They try to drop back too soon. And we're not dropping back, we're rotating around a middle point. So I've always explained this like table football men. They've got that rod through them, and their body like rotates around the rod. It's the same kind of thing with this, okay? So if you watch, as I invert, I tuck, and then I'm just rotating around my tuck. I'm not dropping backwards as such. My whole body moves together, not dropping back, okay? Now, there's a lot to it that I'm barely touching or scraping the surface of all the different bits of mechanics and biomechanics and movement that is happening with this. I'm trying to give you the things that will be most important to you. But if you're still struggling, still more for me to talk about, but if you're still struggling at the end of this video, always film what you're doing and show it to me, because I can give you a little bit more advice, okay? Obviously, also make sure you've got your prerequisites and that you've fully looked at everything I've said first. So, where are we at? So we're rotating. So essentially, in that moment where we are going back and tipping back, we're still engaging our arms. And we never fully let the arms go straight. We keep a little micro bend, okay? And there's still an engagement through that arm. So the closest way to describe this is if we are going from a short arm, we're slowly descending through to a long arm. There is still muscular engagement, just in the opposite way to our pull, okay? So let's do right and left. So I'm going to climb up on my right first, right hand on top. So my hands are going to go quite low. I have them about neck height. right hand on top, and I'm going to swing my hips to the right. I'm in my left armpit, and I'm going to pull my tummy in. And I'm going to drive my knees towards my shoulders as I look backwards and hip backwards. Remember, we're still pulling through the arms, and we're not just letting them drop, we are slowly descending through them. They're still engaged. Okay, left side, and then I'll leave you to practice. Left side climb, left hand on top, left leg on. Left hand is on top about neck height, swing to the left. Pole is in the right armpit, engage the tummy, don't let it drop. Drive the knees up towards the shoulders, tip the head back. Okay. Whew, I'm out of breath now. Doing it and talking is so much harder than just doing it. Hopefully, as always, that makes sense. And as I said, you may just be missing some little component somewhere. So if you're really struggling and you feel like you're strong enough, film it, send it to me. I will do my best to help you. Don't forget to train smarter, not harder.